Halloween Ends is directed by David Gordon Green and is the third and final installment in his new legacy sequel trilogy to John Carpenter's iconic 70s slasher movie, Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis reprises her role as Laurie Strode, who is basically Sarah Connor in this new trilogy. This new sequel trilogy is also a direct continuation of the original 1978 film, ignoring all previous sequels. It promises to bring back what we love about John Carpenter's original movie. It also promises an epic final showdown between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. So, does the final movie deliver on that promise and provide a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy? Well, let's find out. 4 years after Michael Myers' brutal killing spree in Haddonfield, Illinois, Laurie Strode has decided not to live in fear anymore, choosing instead a life of self-empowerment through taking back her story and writing a book about her experience as a survivor of trauma. Her granddaughter, Allison, gets involved with a troubled teen, Corey Cunningham, who the town ostracized after he was accused of killing a boy several years ago. Meanwhile, a Michael Myers copycat stalks the town on Halloween night, preying on the inhabitants, which is a warning sign to Laurie that Michael himself may be back to finish what he started with her years ago. Jamie Lee Curtis's iconic performance as traumatized survivor Laurie Strode gives the film some emotional stakes it wouldn't otherwise have. The film has some evocatively staged shots, particularly a use of overhead and ceiling shots that create a disorienting sense of vertigo and madness, which are nice visual cues for the increasingly unhinged mental state of the characters. I also loved how Michael Myers becomes an almost Pennywise-like force of evil within Haddonfield. Even his hideout is reminiscent of Pennywise's lair in Stephen King's It. I also liked how the evil personified in Michael Myers is not just individual, but shown to be a collective generational force that infects the entire community. Generations of family trauma, abuse, and corruption created the circumstances in which Michael and other killers like him were born. Also, nothing brings a community together like a common enemy. Watching the townsfolk come together cult-like through their hate and fear of Michael is a little unsettling and creepy. The movie doesn't just try to be a slasher film. It actually has the least body count in the entire trilogy, which could either be a plus or a minus depending on what you're looking for in a horror movie. Michael Myers and Laurie Strode's storyline takes a backseat in the first half of the movie, which plays like a teen drama and coming-of-age story, focusing on the blossoming romance between Corey and Laurie's granddaughter, Allison. Corey is played by Rohan Campbell, who does well conveying a sense of angst, sadness, and vulnerability. I like how the film takes some risks and pushes the story in a new direction and doesn't just try to repeat the same beats of the last two films. However, the film suffers mainly from some dodgy writing, particularly in Corey's romance with Allison, which comes off as pretty corny, contrived, and forced. It's unfortunate since their story arc takes up the bulk of the movie. Allison's character motivations especially don't make much sense. She never once asks Corey about the tragic incident from his past. After her mother's murder and years of trauma, you'd think Allison wouldn't be so blindly trusting and would at least show some curiosity about her new boyfriend. I found Allison's character choices a little odd since the film is very much about Laurie Strode finding empowerment through her trauma and becoming a survivor rather than a victim. However, Allison, as well as the other female characters, are mostly portrayed as victims who are weak, gullible, and ineffective most of the time. The film seems to want to have it both ways. On the one hand, it wants to empower its female characters to fight back and reclaim their agency, while on the other, it positions them as naive victims. Apart from one or two inventively staged deaths, I found most of the kill sequences bereft of tension, excitement, or atmosphere. The final confrontation between Laurie and Michael, although well orchestrated, wasn't the intense emotional high that I had expected, mostly since too much time was spent with the contrived love plot, which doesn't create the emotional stakes needed for the climactic showdown at the end. I think the problem is that the film doesn't fully commit itself in any one direction. It wants to be both an emotionally engaging coming-of-age story of star-crossed lovers as well as a cynically violent slasher flick, but isn't able to bring these elements together. I do think the film is trying to say something interesting about how the trauma of history repeats itself and how the sins of the older generation are passed on to the new generation. But any deeper message or potential emotional stakes for the characters are quickly nullified when the movie switches back to full slasher mode, which takes away any emotional payoff by putting the focus back on the gruesome deaths of cynically disposable characters. Halloween Ends has style, atmosphere, and good performances. If you're a fan of the 2018 Halloween, the final chapter might surprise you with the risks it takes, or it may frustrate you, since it ends up sidelining Laurie Strode and Michael Myers by focusing too heavily on the less interesting drama of the younger generation. The sequel trilogy reportedly had John Carpenter's blessing, but I don't think it ultimately succeeds in recapturing the spirit of his original movie or progressing his vision in a satisfying way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.